Okay, good morning.
I'm the speaker. Good evening, my name is Mona and I'm a very grateful addict. And it's a very strange fellowship. I get so fucking mad, I want to kill you all. And then I see the dredges of society who nobody wanted anything to do with stand up for clean time. And I'm impressed. My clean date is the 12th of August, 1968. And your Friday night speaker stole my line, because I always say it may not impress you, but impresses the shit out of me. I want to thank the committee for asking me. And anything I have to say, please don't hold the committee responsible for. I also do not speak for Narcotics Anonymous, for which they are eternally grateful. I also have a lopsided mouth because I had some work done on my face, so my mouth doesn't work. I really don't always leer quite this badly. I will try to tell you a little bit about what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like today, and anything I say is my opinion. You know, I've been here a day or two, but I was the one your sponsor told to stay away from because I would never make it. Because I was what was known as a professional slipper. Just was introduced to recovery when I was 12, and I got clean when I was 32. And I was different, and I was unique. And I will have to tell you something because it's in my heart, and if it offends you, you know, write about it and talk to your sponsor. But you may not need to hear the reading, but it says, these are the principles that made our recovery possible. I don't know what they do in Illinois, but I can fucking count. And when they talk and you put your 2 cents work in, there may be somebody that's going to go outside and die because they didn't hear the message. Nor did any of you hear your chair tonight say, in respect, we will not talk. These are the principles that made each and every one of you sitting in this room be able for one time in your life to hold up your head and say, my name is Mona and I'm an addict. You know, I looked at the ground for 32 years and slipped around because I knew what I was, and today I can look anyone in the eye, and I am proud to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous. The lie is dead. The lie is also dead that women do not recover. You saw who stood up first. Now that I've endeared myself to you all, I'll try to be a bit more spiritual. I am born and raised in California in a place called El Centro. For any of you who have the misfortune of knowing where that is, it's where they send Catholics to see if they can stand purgatory. I am half Irish, half Apache Indian, and I was born and raised a Roman Catholic, so you know I had great need for a program. I am 8 times married and 1 near miss. And I've only found that necessary to do once in my recovery, and I watched him die of my disease. I came from a loving family. You know, I am blessed, some days I'm blessed, to own my own treatment facility. And there are things I really hate to hear in these rooms, and that's treatment facility language. Because the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. And I hate to hear people say, well, I'm from a dysfunctional family. Who the fuck isn't? I mean, I was the most dysfunctional thing my family ever saw. And they loved me, and they told me I was special. I was the only girl and 35 grandchildren and a baby. And when they told me I was special, I had selective hearing, even at a very young age, and I heard I was different. And till I was about 16, I wanted to be a boy, and then I found the therapeutic value if I was going to be a dope fiend of being a girl. God loves us best. We got the price built in. And I know some of you Vestal virgins that get clean that never did any of that shit, you know. But I bet you fucked your old man for a washing machine. I just made money at it. And if I could still get anybody to pay, I'd be in a different line of work. I find anybody willing to pay me, we'll lock them in a room. Just sign the checks, darling. I graduated from high school when I was 1 month short of 16. I graduated the second youngest girl at that time to graduate UCLA when I was 18. When I was 21, I had my first doctorate degree, and when I was 22, I was doing 10 to life. And that was the high side of my addiction. I spent 7 years in the penitentiary. And I don't tell you that to impress you. I tell you that so I don't forget. So don't come ask me what for, because it's none of your business. And my first sponsor told me that because I used to like to strut around the rooms in California and tell them how tough I was. And she said, you can't tell anybody that. So I don't know why I listened to her, but I did. I wanted to be worse than, because I felt so much less than. I got out of the penitentiary. High on my list was obviously to get laid. I mean, you know. But I am first and foremost a dope fiend. It took me 3 months to get around to that. You know, coming out of the penitentiary, I was had to report to a PO until I was 11 years clean. And first thing I did in the parking lot was to fix, because I was slick. And I don't know if I was married to somebody. It's all a blur. But I was real unhappy in California, so I flipped a coin if I was going to go to Alaska or Hawaii, and Hawaii came up, so I went to Hawaii. And I was about to go back to jail again. And my mother said, well, there's this wonderful thing, recovery. All the best people are doing it. That's very important to my mother, that the best people do it. And my old man, whoever the fuck he was real glad to get me to go anywhere. And, but my attorney said, it will keep you from going to jail. I said, oh, I'll go. I mean, I might be dumb, but I'm not stupid. And so I went into the other fellowship. And in those days, we didn't know about cross addiction. If you're addicted to one, you're addicted to all. So I quit drinking, and I shot dope, and I worked the 13 step to the very best of my ability. For any of you who are too new not to know what that is, I'm sure there's someone standing by the door of the opposite sex that will explain it to you. I'd like to clarify that to you because, trust me, men are not the only ones to do that. I've been there and done that. And you know what? If they get well, they leave you anyway. You know, we're the sick ones, the ones that have, quote unquote, some time and, well, I was trying to think of a nice way to say it. Shoot fish in a barrel. Because if they stay around, they're going to drop you anyway because they're going to know how sick you are. I had to come home to California from Hawaii, and I knew my mother would meet me at the plane and say something like, hello. That's good for 5 years. Oh, you're looking good, or I love you, or I'm glad to see you, and then I would have an excuse to put down all the walls and go balls to the wall. And I came home, and it took me about, my mother greeted me and said, now that you're in recovery, I'd like you to start a program for some people down where my folks are in the liquor business, which was quite convenient, and banking, which certainly was convenient if you're shooting dope. And so I started this program, and I'd go into bars, and I'd sit down in a bar. Now, I am born in the desert where it's too fucking hot to drink soda pop, because you throw up. But I'd go in these bars and I'd drink Coca-Cola and say, well, it's not slippery, I'm a director. And one day, the guy said, you want a Coke, Mona? And I said, no, I want a Stinger on and over. And I was off to the races one more time. And at that time, I was the executive director of an inpatient treatment facility in Watts, California. And I ran that program, and I was loaded for 2.5 years. And but we hired people with lots of letters under their name. Nobody recovering, God forbid, they'd know the trick is up. And but normal people who work with us think they have the ability to save us, and we play them like violins. Please save me. Please pay my bills. Give me a little leftover. Tell them 14 times a week you got to pay your electric bill that's $7,000. And I went to my mother's on Thanksgiving with my children, and my mother told me I was not welcome in her home, and if I came again that she would call the police. And I went, and I stopped on the way going home, and I bought a turkey, and I bought all the stuff that you do, and I always kept drugs in my house and always kept booze in my house. And I went home, and I cooked the whole thing, and I don't remember, but I threw it all outside for the dogs. And I made up my mind to show my mother that I was going to use until I died. And from Thanksgiving until the 12th of August, I used around the clock. And God was not ready to let me out. And I had my friend Eric, who's home with God now, used to say, any more and I would have died, and any less than I would have died. I was at that place that you get to in your addiction where you can't get loaded and you can't get clean. You're just in limbo. The days of being high were long down the road. It was now a matter of I use or I'm going to die. And I believe, and I can't prove this in writing anywhere, But from my own personal experience, if I could have done any better, I would have. I have never met a drug addict who had 1 minute of recovery that wanted to go back to what they had. Every day I would say, I'm not going to do it today, as I was on the way to doing it. And I believe, and as I said, what I say is my belief, that I am not clean because I choose to be clean. Because I chose to be clean 15 years before I put it down every fucking day. I am clean by the grace of a loving God. I obviously am quite opinionated. I love newcomers. You know, they've been here 3 heartbeats. They found God, worked the steps, and this is where they always wanted to be. Last fucking place I ever wanted to be. And the God talks to newcomers. You ever notice you get over a year, God doesn't talk to you, only newcomers. My phone doesn't ring. Hello, this is God. Oh, yes, God, how are you today? But newcomers, those fuckers, God talks to them. I'm real grateful God doesn't talk to me. If God called me on the phone, I wouldn't be standing here. I'd drop dead. I hear my God through you. I am the only thing in my life I see one-dimensional. I see everything else three-dimensional. I see myself one-dimensional and backwards. So I try not to put a lot of value in what I see of myself. But if I see you having a tough day and you're walking the walk, because any asshole can talk the talk. You know? I mean, this is not Albert Einstein work we do here, gang. You know, they read the same goddamn thing at every meeting. If you got it going on in 3 weeks, you got the buzzwords and people think, well, my God, they have time. And only newcomers say time means nothing. Fuck you. I used to say, well, whoever got up first had the most time. I'll beat the shit out of you before you tell me that today. Because I didn't pay for my seat to get here. But I have paid dearly since I've been here to keep it. We don't require much of you here, except that you change everything about yourself. And the one thing we ask of you here, above and beyond, is that you make peace with the one person in your life that you went to any length not to know, and that's yourself. I mean, I'd much rather have God talk to me than me have to work on my character defects, because I can get mad at him, I don't see him. But I see him in you. It's like when they're doing the countdown. It makes me cry. Because there's no way for me to get from where I was to standing up here. Ain't no way. No amount of money, no amount of prayers. The only thing I had to do was surrender that the fight was over and I had lost. I am proud to be called a book person. I am proud that if I sponsor you, trust me, you know about the steps and you know about the traditions. The steps are what allowed me to make peace with me, and the traditions are what allow me to stand you. Because without you, there is no me. I mean, if I came all the way from California and there was nobody in here, I'd probably feel a little bad. I've sponsored a lot of women over the years. and I'm sure you're going to understand what I'm going to say. Women sponsor women, and men sponsor men. God has not made the man I can't lie to. And sometimes make him pay for the lie. And God has not made the man that can't lie to me. I have no idea how you people think. It is a mystery to me. I know. And my ego tells me, well, I can sponsor a man. No, I cannot. I can fuck him. I can take his money. I cannot sponsor him. We seem to have a great crowd of people in Narcotics Anonymous today who think they can fuck their way into better living. I'm an old broad, trust me, it doesn't work. Or I'd have 38 or 9 years. But, I have heard women say, well, I can't find a sponsor who used like me. I can't find a sponsor who's from the same kind of family I'm from. I can't find a sponsor who used the way I did. You show me in any piece of literature we have that that's what it says a sponsor is. A sponsor is a guide. A sponsor is someone who has a sponsor. A sponsor is someone who has worked the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. I think if you take someone's life in your hand and you work the third step and they're on a second, shame on you. I am responsible for the hand of NA. And if I sponsor you, I am responsible that you get the tools. Your responsibility is if you choose to use them. But my responsibility is that you have them. I had a sponsor, I hated this bitch. I think in those days, they drew cards and she lost and she got me. Because I'm not a day at the beach today, but when I was new, not a lot of people came around me. I used to walk in the clubhouse and think, gee, maybe I smell bad, because they just move away. Because I only knew anything. I had one working relationship with an emotion. It was called hate. And it kept me alive until I could get to you. And I honed it like a fine science. And I could use it like a carving knife. And cut you down. You wouldn't even know you were bleeding until you hit the floor. I was not a physically violent person. If I wanted her beat up, I paid him. Made sense to me. But I thought I was tough. And I thought I was slick. And I thought I had it going on. And I'd walk into the room and I just radiated disease. My sponsor told me that I could not speak for the first year. She did not need me spreading my disease to people who were trying to get well. She told me I would go to 365 meetings in 365 days, and if I missed a day, I would have to start over. I went to over 700 meetings, and I need to tell you that I'm indebted to the other fellowship, because when I got clean, there was one meeting in the world, and I didn't shoot dope one day a week. So I'm eternally grateful for them that they loved me until more of us got around. I've been very fortunate. I've had 3 sponsors in the time I've got clean. My sponsor has the longest clean time in Narcotics Anonymous. She's coming on 39 years. So we like to go to a meeting where there's a lot of men, and then they have a countdown, and she and I stand up, and we got a third of the clean time in the room. the women don't recover. Just, this lady that I hated taught me everything that I value today. And I did. I have to tell you that the first 3.5 years I was here, I wanted to use every day, all day. And I was afraid if I went out and used, I wouldn't die. If someone had said, Mona, here, take this, I guarantee you'll die, I would have a different clean date. But I don't know why I stayed. That's the hardest question that I'm asked, because I was a slipper for so long, and I believe, like I told you, it's the grace of a loving God. He said, it is your time in the sun. Come up out of the slime, and I will set you free. And I learned that in rooms like this from people like you. That I no longer had to hang my head. I no longer had to sell my body. I no longer had to look at the terror in my children's eyes and the fear in my mother's face. That I could walk upright like God had meant me to walk. But I hated this bitch when I was new. And she said, now you'll go home and you'll read this book. You'll come back and you'll give me one word spiritual principle for the first step. Well, due to my active addiction, I had lost the ability to read and write when I got here. And I said, oh, I really like to, but I can't read or write because of my addiction. She said, that's all right, darling. We got it on tape. My first sponsor quit school in the 9th grade. So I thought, I'm a mental giant, man. I'll get this down slick, and then this bitch will leave me alone. Took me 2 weeks to come up with what I believe is the spiritual principle for the first step, what my sponsor's sponsor, and her sponsor said, and all the people I sponsor say. And I believe the first principle is surrender. I must admit that I have not got the power. I never had the power, and I ain't never going to be here long enough to get the power. Which seems a bit unfair to me. I think God let me drive once in a while. But He doesn't. She took me on through the steps, and I hear a lot of conversation about the second step having to do with insanity. I beg to differ. Normal people who do what we do the behavior we do. They just don't repeat it. The second step has to do with faith. If I am not in charge, I must have faith that there's something more powerful than I am that will take care of me. And the third step has to do with trust. If I'm going to turn my life and my will over to something I can't touch, see, taste, feel, or smell, I better trust it. And I never have to worry when I'm having a bad day what step I'm not working. It's always the first step. It's not the 4th step, it's not the 12th step, it's not the 10th step, it's not the 6th step. One more time, I have it in this fine, keen mind of mine that I am in charge, and it all goes to hell. The only difference is today, I used to, when I was with less time, I would get the water up here before I'd realize, oh, I'm not in charge. Now, sometimes I can catch it, it's only to here. This is not a program of perfection. This is a journey. And the only time you will come to the end of this journey is when you throw dirt in your face. And when I die, I will be able to say, I am recovered. Because in some of the literature it says recovered, you have to remember these are not Pulitzer Prize people that are writing this book. They did not know the difference between recovering and recovered. All living drug addicts that I know that are recovered are out using. This lady taught me what it meant to be a lady. When I came in, she made me make all my dresses into blouses. And I used to say, when are these guys going to quit treating me like a whore? She says, when you quit acting like one. What a concept. You know, I had hip huggers and halters and was running around. Hello, hello. And a guy would come up and he'd say, oh, hi, give me a hug. I went home. It was a white picket fence, 2.5 kids and a dog. It was him. When I was about 4 years clean, my sponsor said to me in a room full of more people than this, from a podium, Mona, I have something to tell you. And I thought she was going to praise me in front of all these people. And she said, Prince Charming is dead. Soon as she told me, I know none of you have ever done this. As soon as she told me, do not get involved, I was gone. And I found him. And he was all wonderful. He had one little flaw. He was married to someone else. Seemed perfectly all right to me. I wasn't breaking any rules. Let him play. And a child was born of that relationship, dead. And that's the time he decided probably time to go back to his wife. So I had that child alone and buried alone. And I learned a valuable lesson that I deserve more than somebody else's leftovers. And I know my sponsor told me that, but you know, we hear when we can hear. And it doesn't make any difference that you tell me I'm all right until I know I'm all right. You know, I mean, I've seen thousands of people die who work. And the only difference is I don't want anything that goes on with using. Not to save my children, not to save my grandchildren, not to save my mother. If they want it, they can come here and get it. But I ain't getting it up for nothing. You know, my gift from my God says free. She taught me that it takes courage to be clean. If you think you're in this room because you're weak, I'd strongly suggest weak people die using. Strong people come in here and do what they got to do to stay. And she told me honesty had nothing to do about your cash, your old man, or your car. Had to do that I had to be honest with me. And if I was honest with me, I didn't have to be afraid to be honest with you. The trick in recovery, if you're a speed freak and you want it in a little car that you can put in your pocket, is you must become transparent. If you become transparent, you have nothing to fear. I don't mean transparent so we'll feel sorry for you. But I am no longer a secret. I will tell you everything about me, the good, the bad, and the boring. On a one-to-one basis, a podium is not a place to share a great many things about me. But I no longer am afraid that you're going to find out who I am. You choose to be my friend, you've made a hell of a friend. You choose not to be my friend, you missed a hell of a friend, and that's where it starts and ends. And the most important thing that she taught me was the definition of love. She said love is something given freely, expecting nothing in return. I can go into any room of Narcotics Anonymous and tell you that I love you all. There's some of you motherfuckers I don't like. Not here, I don't know anybody here. Some of you won't like me, hey, that's fine. You know, but it's all my life, if I loved anything, I had a list that it had to come up to. And all my life I killed everything I wanted to love because I would not let it go. So I love you whether you choose to be clean or if you choose to die. That's between you and your God. It has nothing to do with whether I will love you. My program tells me that I must love you. It doesn't say anywhere I gotta like you. Or that I gotta choose to spend time with you. But if you call and need help, I better go, or I'm going to be that one raising my hand if there's anyone here with less than 30 days. My sponsor told me that I had to go to the meetings in this one clubhouse. I had to get there half hour early, leave a half hour late, shake the speaker's hand, told him I like him even if I couldn't stand him. So if any of you, your sponsor tells you that, fucker, don't come up and talk to me. I don't care. She took me to service meetings for 2 years, and the only thing I got to do was clean ashtrays. I had a maid at home. I said, can I bring her? She said, no. I said, why? She said, you got to learn things. I know how to clean an ashtray. In those days, we had real cups. Now, if you put out real cups, whoop, out the door, they'd be gone in a day. And I got to wash cups. I mean, I was at the top of my game. And I said, I got the maid home. She'll come do the dishes. She said, no, Mona, you got to do them. But then they made me make coffee. I don't drink coffee. I don't even eat coffee ice cream. I made such horrible coffee, I only had to make it twice. They moved me right into arranging chairs. I just, whoop, buy coffee. She taught me that service is the icing on the cake. The 10% do it, and 90% bitch about the way it's done. And if you have a home group, God willing, your sponsor makes you have one. Please vote on all issues before your group. In California, we said they'll never vote in the book. We have to put no input. We'll always have the white book. And you see what we got today. We got a book. If you do not want your literature changed, because once they open up the steps to mess with them, in my opinion, the game's over. I don't care if they call me it or sit and stay. That is not the point. I care that we give them the power to change these principles that made my recovery possible. And that's probably something I shouldn't say, but who cares? They hate me at World Service anyway. I will never be a World Service speaker, trust me, at a World Convention. This lady told me that I could go to no other clubhouse but this clubhouse. And for 5 years, this bitch told me I had to move women that I want to spit on when I was using. Had to go and say, do you need help? I said, can I send my friend? No, you'll go. I went. I don't know why, except God loved me. And I had that fear that I wouldn't die. And finally, when I had just a little over 5 years, I told my sponsor that I wanted to sell my house and move to Alaska. This was October, and I put my house on the market the first day of October, and we figured it would take me clear to breakup, which is in May or June. And I put my house on the market the second day of October, and I was in Fairbanks, Alaska, the 12th day of October. First person that looked at my house paid my price and paid cash to the note, and then paid rent until the escrow closed. And the last thing my sponsor said as I'm getting on the plane is, Mona, you know how you are. Promise me to be real careful about the men. I said, I will never marry again. I don't know about your God, but mine, as soon as I say never, it becomes always. And as soon as I say always, it becomes never. I got off the plane. I left L.A. It was 85. I got off the plane. It was 28 degrees below zero. Now, I'm born in the desert. What do I know about below zero? And I had on these lace-up boots that were plastic. And as I got off the plane, it sounded like popcorn, you know. I got in with the soles and the shoelaces. The rest were gone. And And I'm used to 350 people at a meeting at that time, and I went to Alaska, and I went in this little dark, dingy room. There were 6 people there. And it was like a smoker. You open the door and boom, you know. And I told them about how they didn't do it right. Any of you planning on moving, please zip your mouth. I told them how it's not how we do it in California. They said, who gives a fuck how you do it in California? And I met him. He was quite amazing, quite amazing. 6'4", full-blooded Indian, 5 years clean, and he thought I was helpless. I'm about as helpless as a fucking cobra. Yeah. He had one little minor defect. The day we got married, he told me he'd been loaded the day before. And I said, well, I'm an executive director. I'll save him. And I took to being an R&on like a fucking duck to water. And the things I told other people not to do, I did. I knew it was my fault. I knew I could save him if I just did it different he wouldn't use. And he was a periodic, and I had no understanding how you could go 2 years and not use. He caused more havoc in one weekend than I caused in 10 years. And I tried for 6 years, 6.5 years. He was head of the Department of Corrections for the state of Alaska. At that time, he passed $600,000 in bad paper. He was slick. He could pass checks with nothing on them. Those puppies were straight D.F. Goodrich. And I loved him. He was all the things that I had ever wanted. Only man in my life that has ever called me a nickname. And it's none of your business what he calls me. But I looked and I watched and I knew that I either had to leave or I had to join him, because you cannot watch something you love die inch at a time. And I told him that I loved him, but that I couldn't do it anymore, and he was on his way to Hawaii. And I told him, that's fine. And I prayed all the way to the airport that he wouldn't change his mind, and then I cried all the way home. And I never cried from that day to this day. But I had mourned him for 6.5 years. If you're married to someone in active addiction, you pray that God will kill them, and then when they're 2 minutes coming home late at night, you say, God, I lied. Please bring them home. You know, and he told me that he was going to Hawaii to die. And that's exactly what he did. And of course, Narcotics Anonymous is a close-knit fellowship. And a girl I used to sponsor was who was with him. And when he died, she was afraid to call me because I had known that she'd left with him. And I could truly say that I loved him, then I was glad that he didn't die alone, that nobody deserves to die alone. And the last thing he said when he died was to tell me it would be all right. And in that week, I lost my husband, I lost the best legitimate job I've ever had, and I lost my health. And at 14 years, I was where I had been through all of my active addiction, out, 65 below zero. Why the fuck don't you leave me alone? Why can't I have just a job, an old man, my kids be all right, and work and do the normal things? And so at that time, I made up my mind to kill myself. And I bought the drugs I knew would kill me. I cleaned my house. My mother wouldn't come and see the body and say, see, she's still a pig. I wrote my children these wonderful letters like I'd be a really wonderful mother dead. And at that time I was had a regional office, and I had to go read a report. And I went 400 miles to read this report. And we're in the business meeting. They said, well, everybody read Mo's report? They said, yes. They said, oh, well, Mo, you don't need to read it. I said, well, fuck, I could have killed myself. But since I'd gone so far, I went to the meeting, and that night there was my Eskimo there, and he said what I needed to hear. He said, if you're full of anger and resentment, you're mad at Narcotics Anonymous, you're mad at God, you're suffering from untreated addiction, and you'll work steps 4 through 9 until the pain goes away. I thought, what a concept. I would like to tell you that I went home, worked him, and got just wonderful peach key. It took me 2 years to get to the way I felt. And in that time, I had to come home to California, which is the last place I had planned on spending my senior years. And I had to live with my mother one more time. And she was the person my whole life that I blamed for everything. We had a game. I asked, she said no. I begged, she said maybe. I groveled, and the check was in. Whole life it was her fault, because there was only she and I, and if it wasn't her, guess who I had to look at? And she still tries to play that game with me. You know, I own my own business, and so I get short of money. I say, Ma, yes, no, 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 babe. And then she says, no. I said, well, thank you. And then she goes like, well, maybe she forgot the game. I'll tell her again, no, Mona, I can't lend you the money. I said, well, thank you, Ma. I appreciate you thinking about it. And go away, and she'll call me, why don't you want my money? But I don't have to do that today. You know, I used to when my mother would buy my stepfather a gift, I'd think that bitch is spending my money. You know, and I'd look at him with his, what the fuck he doing with my money on? Like I'd done something to her. Now, you know, when she tells me about she's going to give me this, leave me that, leave me this. This necklace, this diamond necklace I have on my mother, let me wear it to come here. And she said, now be careful and don't lose it, because when I die, you get it. I said, well, if I get it when you die, what the fuck's the difference if I lose it? It's mine. But today I can tell you, if my mother goes and has spent every dime, it was hers. And that's the freedom I have because I'm in recovery. I'd always wanted to have my own. I don't know what the fuck time it is. Am I over? This is the part you get to cry. I'd always wanted my own treatment facility. And I tried and tried and tried and tried, and it just wouldn't work. And it's like everything in my life. There's only been one thing in my life that I surrendered to God that He took from me. And as soon as I surrendered God, all right, I'll go get a job, I'll teach, I'll do whatever. Because I have an abundance of education. It's really not good for much. As soon as I said that, 2 weeks later I was in my own treatment facility. It's the process. I must surrender to God's will, and then He does more for me than I ever envisioned. And I had, my oldest son had gone into treatment on December, and I opened my facility in February. And the person who was supposed to be my partner backed out, and so I had given my oldest son up to his father because I was too busy to take care of another kid. And I did not see that child until they did intervention on him that December. And 2 months later, he became my business partner. And this June, he will be dead 5 years. He died of AIDS 5 years ago on the 25th of June. Almost 5 years clean. If you sit in a room of Narcotics Anonymous and you have not been tested, I would say that you're irresponsible assholes. And if you have unprotected sex, I would say you have absolutely no self-worth. We bought my son 4 years. I believe everybody that comes into recovery, because the first thing that works when you get here, your genitals. And you all think you got to make up for lost time. I wish you all had to volunteer 1 month in the terminal ward of people dying with AIDS. Any motherfucker tell me he won't use a condom because he doesn't enjoy it can go somewhere else. My son taught me what it means to have courage. He taught me that a brave man dies just once, a coward 1,000 times. He believed that it was a gift from a loving God, though he did not understand the gift. And he walked tall, a giant. 31 years old, and his life was over. And I promised him when he was diagnosed, and please, if you're tested, be tested more than once. He tested nothing in April and full-blown AIDS in July. Please, please be tested. 93% of the people that are coming into the fellowship in New York City are testing positive. How could you live with your head in a hole and think it cannot happen to you? I told my son I would never lie to him, that I would walk with him to the end, and he would have to carry half the load. You know, if you're very fortunate, you have children of your body, but if you're gifted from God, you will have a child of your heart. And he was this to me. I would have given up my other children. I would have given up my grandchildren. I would have given up my life to save him. He's tall and blonde and blue-eyed and never had a bad word to say about anything or anyone. And he loved me, the mother who had given him away. And I lied to him every day. Because intellectually I knew he was going to die, but emotionally he was going to be the first to live. And we treated the disease very aggressively. And he went and talked, and I know a lot of people clean because he touched their lives. And on the last day of his life, I was going to go to a meeting with a person who had been in treatment with me. And I said, I'll just run and tell Don we're going to a meeting, and then we'll go. And as I was walking in the hospital, the doctor came walking toward me, and he said, your son will not see the day out, but you must go in the room and tell him that he can go. Because the only thing that's keeping him here is he does not want to leave you. And I knew why I had been here. And I knew why I'd done what I did, because I performed the one unselfish act I have ever performed in my life before or since. I went into this child that I wanted more than life itself to live with me and be with me. And I told him that he could go and be with God. And I told him the fight was over and that he had fought a brave and valiant fight and that I was proud of him. And we'd had a dog that died the year before, and he said, "Will I see the Bulldog?" And I said, "Yes, you will." And the first dwarf that had been diagnosed died, and he said, "Will I see Louie?" And I said, "Yes, you will." And he looked at me, and he weighed less than 90 pounds. And he said, "If this is the end, there is no one I would rather have with me than you." That's a long ways for selling your ass for a bag. I will tell you that I have two other children, and they're both in recovery. That I have 2 grandchildren, never seen me loaded, and they think I am the greatest thing since the Bank of America. Because that's a grandma's job. You spoil them, and then when they get out of line, you give them back to their parents. I took my grandson shopping with some of the people from my facility, and Sean's going around saying, "I want that." We're in a pet store. "I want that, I want that, I want that." And one guy said to him, "You're a little spoiled, aren't you?" And he put his hand on his hip. He said, "My grandmother will buy me anything I want." And he's right. I will also feed him chocolate cake and Coca-Cola for breakfast. I do not worry where he's going to college or if his teeth rot. That's his mother's problem. And my granddaughter just thinks, she wanted a cat. Her mother said no, it was her birthday. I gave her a cat. Let her mother be mad at me. I don't care. And the cat, what's on the mother's bed? I have learned to stand up and be counted. If you sit in these rooms, you will be called upon to be counted. You're accountable to yourself and to your God, but you're also accountable to this program. There are people who will tell you you can do anything as long as you don't pick up, and I will tell you that that is a lie. I want to be the 10% in this program who has program. I don't want to be the 90% that settles for abstinence. My God promised me it all. And people who settle for abstinence settle for skimmed milk. I never wanted cotton when I was shooting dope, and I want it all when I'm here today. And you only get that not by working the steps, not by working the traditions, but by incorporating them into every area of your life. This is a process that works from the inside. And you know what? When I was 20 years old, the outside was dynamic, and the inside was rotten. And today, the inside is just shiny, squeaky. I'm a square. Kind of sickening. I do all those square things, and I have a program that has allowed me freedom. And freedom doesn't mean nothing left to lose. Freedom means everything left to lose. In closing, I'm asked many times what recovery means to me, and I believe Martin Luther King said it best in Washington, D.C., free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.